Hey, I'm John Gordon. I am with Rich Roll. Rich, it is great to be with you.
Nice to see you, John. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
So, you had me on your podcast, one of my favorites I've ever done. You're incredible. You're an author, but you're also an ultra marathoner. Can you explain what that is to people who don't know?
Well, an ultra marathon is any running event that's technically longer than a marathon. I would say I specialize in ultra endurance multi-sport. I'm much more of a triathlete than a pure runner. So I've done some ultra distance triathlons and some swim run races, things where you kind of mix up the disciplines a little bit, but super
How,
long.
how old were you when you started these?
My first ultra endurance race was when I was 42 in 2008. It was a race called Ultraman, which is a 3-day, 320-mile double Ironman distance triathlon that circumnavigates the big island of Hawaii over a couple days.
Wow. So most people are ending their exercising career and athletic career in their 40s, but you began yours in many ways. How did that come about?
Well, what happened was I was a swimmer in high school and college, and I competed at a fairly high level at Stanford. I was on the Stanford University swim team back in the late 1980s. I should say I was a bench warmer on that team. That was a team rife with Olympians and world record holders and the like. And it was great to train with the best in the world, but I was by no means a big point scorer on that team. And then I had kind of a detour into the world of drug addiction and alcoholism, which really took me out of the game. It really prevented me from reaching my potential as an athlete in my collegiate years. So I suppose on some level, I always felt like I had some unfinished business to do as an athlete. And then I did what most people do. I went into, trying to find a job. I went to law school. I became a lawyer. Meanwhile, drinking the whole time until I ultimately bottomed out and got sober at 31, and then spent 10 years trying to repair all the wreckage that I had created as a result of my drinking and using. So I was very focused on my profession, on my career, on rebuilding my relationships, becoming a responsible member of society. And during that period of time, I didn't really take care of myself. I was a junk food addict. I was a workaholic. So by the time I was 39, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was never like a morbidly obese person, but just looked like a guy who's working 80-hour weeks in a big law firm. And I had a moment of reckoning with that shortly before I turned 40, where I had this incident on the staircase going up to bed one night where I couldn't make it up a simple flight of stairs without having to take a pause. I was winded, out of breath. I had tightness in my chest, and heart disease runs in my family. So it was a very scary moment in which I realized I needed to change how I was living. And it was a moment very similar to the day I decided to get sober. It's like these specific moments in time that I think visit all of us. And if we have the acuity to really recognize their significance and act upon them, can have dramatic impacts on how we live. And so with that awareness that I was having another one of those moments, I set about changing how I was living. And that began with developing a new relationship with food that ultimately led me into eating a plant-based diet, which really energized me, restored my vitality, and gave me an interest in moving my body once again, because I've been essentially sedentary for the better part of a decade. So I began working out again for the first time in a very long time with no eyes set on returning to competitive athletics. But with each successive week, my weight was coming off. I was feeling better and better. I had this experience about 4 months into this experiment with food where I went out for a run and ended up running 24 miles, which was like longer than anything I'd ever done in my life. I didn't realize that I was capable of that. And I remember thinking, either I've just unlocked some dormant gene that I didn't know that I had, or there's something about this plant-based diet that's agreeing with me in a way that I never could have imagined. And that really got me thinking about the limits that we set upon ourselves and kind of the untapped potential that I had in many areas of my life that I'd sort of been blind to. And I think that was the initial impulse that lured me into the world of ultra endurance sports, because it's this incredible template to explore human potential, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because it really strips you down to the core of of who you are, and forces you to really confront yourself in a profound way. And I just loved everything about that. And that was really kind of what brought me into, all the things that I get to do today.
Yeah, I want to make sure I heard you right. You actually just one day went out there and ran 24 miles?
Well, I had been exercising regularly up until that point, but it was pretty moderate. Like I would go out for a 45-minute run or an hour run. I was hitting the pool once or twice a week. My wife bought me a bike for my birthday. I'd never ridden a bike before. And that involved, casual Saturday morning rides with a couple buddies. But I'd never done anything really all that extreme. And on that specific day, I was just visited with, one of those occasions that, any athlete or any artist or writer, I know you've experienced this as a writer, where you're just in the zone and kind of time fades away and you just feel amazing and you want to just keep going and time bends on itself. And that was that experience that I had. It was like, they call it the flow state now, I think. The cool kids call it that. That's certainly what I was experiencing there. And yeah, it was like kind of a watershed moment for me.
When you were finished with that run, what did you think and feel?
I remember thinking I could have kept running, but I had a conference call that I had to do. I was still practicing law at the time. And I was thinking, all these lawyers in Beverly Hills that I was in the midst of, doing negotiations with, what would they think if I was, at 11:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, if I'm out on a trail. So I was thinking I got to get back to work. But I also thought, wow, like, I'm like an old dude. Like, how is this, happening? And again, just to kind of frame it, it made me think about all of these things we accept as fact about, what our bodies are capable of, what our minds are capable of. And, you just sort of believe, well, at 40, you're not really supposed to be able to do stuff like that. And the fact that I was doing things I'd never been able to do before really broadened my aperture on what is truly possible.
So can anyone do this, or do you have a special gene?
I don't know that I have a special gene. I will say this, I don't consider myself a runner. Anything that I've achieved in running is due purely to work ethic and discipline. And, I have a high pain. If I have any talent at all, it's that I have a high pain threshold. I like to suffer, but I'm certainly not any kind of natural runner. I would say that I do have a disposition to athletics, though. Having been a swimmer for many years as a youth, I knew how to train my body. I knew that I was able to, endure gigantic workloads. And so I had that awareness, and I knew how to push myself. In terms of any kind of special gifts as an endurance athlete, I really think I'm pretty average. And if you go on Strava and you look at my workouts, you will realize that, I perform kind of as a middle of the packer. I'm not a very fast runner or cyclist. I have the capacity to just keep going, though, without slowing down. I think that's probably my talent.
And then you wrote a book, Finding Ultra. The revised edition just came out. Can you tell us about that and about your journey?
Sure. So what happened was I started performing at a pretty high level in these races, and that got a bunch of media attention because people were interested in not only the fact that a middle-aged guy could be doing this, but also that I was doing it on a plant-based diet. People were like, how does that work? How do you do this without animal products? And that led to the opportunity to write a book and tell my story. And that book came out in 2012. And it's sort of three different books. It's an addiction and recovery memoir. It's a sports biography, I suppose. And it's also kind of a primer about how I live this plant-based lifestyle. And that book did quite well. It's been translated into a number of languages and has sort of had a word-of-mouth life. It's sold more books every year than the year before. And so the opportunity arose to revise it and update it. And I jumped on that because I don't know, John, you've written a million books. Do you ever go back and read a book you wrote like 10 years ago and think, I could have said that better? So I really wanted to, I've become a better writer over the years, and I felt like it could be a better book. So I seized that opportunity and I updated it. I brought it up to speed to all the things that I've done since the book has come out, because I've done other athletic challenges. And I think the obstacles and challenges that I faced in recalibrating my entire life, even outside of athletics, to become this advocate in the wellness space, has presented me with obstacles that in many ways I think have been even more significant and severe than some of the things I faced in tackling these endurance challenges. And I really wanted to tell that story. And I also wanted to provide the reader with there's a brand new chapter that's very prescriptive. It's very much, how I approach challenges, how I set goals, how I, overcome obstacles, and ultimately, it's a path towards mastery and achieving potential. So that's like a 50-page new chapter that I added to the book that I'm really proud of.
Yeah, I love that, because this is Positive University.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would love to know, like, how do you stay positive through all your challenges? And how did you stay positive throughout your life, through all your setbacks, your addictions, your overcoming, your running, your racing? How do you overcome all that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been about being honest with myself. Getting sober is all about snapping the prison of denial that holds you back. And that requires you to confront yourself in a very honest way. So I don't really think of it in the context of like trying to be positive all the time. It's more about brutal self-honesty and really investing in the inside work to try to figure out what makes me tick. And so when I get up in the morning, and I, have to go on some crazy, training run or something like that, and I don't feel like doing it, rather than just try to trick myself into having a positive attitude about it, my sort of mantra or my strategy for that is to act in the face of however I feel. So if I'm not feeling positive, rather than just pretend that I'm feeling positive, I take the action despite my mood. I have this mantra, it's called mood follows action. You can't think your way out of a negative disposition. The only way to shift your perspective is to take an action in the face of that, and to understand that whatever emotional state you're in that is holding you prisoner is only going to be altered through taking contrary action that will then, basically through physical motion or any kind of task, will then trigger you to shift your perspective on what you're doing. So a perfect example of that is, not wanting to go out for a run, breaking it down into the simple steps of like, well, the first thing is you sit up in bed, and you put your feet on the ground, like breaking it down into the tiniest tasks that seem very doable. And then before you know it, you're out running. And when you return, you feel great. And you think, I never come back and think, well, I wish I hadn't done that. I'm always happier and my mood has shifted. And then I'm in a positive mindset. So it's taking action to shift mindset.
I love that you talk about real positivity, because I'm not big on fake positivity. You really can't fake it. And research even shows that if you try to fake it, that actually does more harm than good. I want you to take us back to, early in your life with the drugs, with the addiction, because what I find so inspiring about you is that you took all this bad at one point in your life and you turned it into all this good. And it's such an inspiring story. I don't want to gloss over that. So how bad was it? And how did you overcome it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was bad. I was really a hope to die alcoholic by the time I was 31 years old. I was a round the clock drinker. I was a guy, for whom it was not unusual to start the day with a vodka tonic in the shower and sneak drinks throughout the day, trying to hold down a law job, living this crazy secret life that I thought nobody knew about, but of course everybody did. I couldn't be counted on to show up. I couldn't tell the truth. I had alienated not just my coworkers, but my friends and my family didn't want anything to do with me. I was sleeping on a bare mattress in a basically unfurnished apartment that I was about to get evicted from. And I would spend days lost in blackouts, waking up in strange places. I got 2 DUIs within a 2-month period. I was facing jail time. I had my driver's license taken away from me. My boss at my law firm knew what was going on. Like my whole world was caving in on me. And just to kind of place it in context, John, I was somebody who, as a young person, had a lot of promise. Like I graduated from high school at the top of my class. I got into Harvard, I got into Princeton, I got into Stanford. I was one of the top swimmers in my region. I was being recruited at colleges all over the country. Like I was a golden child. And I had this crazy precipitous fall from grace in which I squandered all of this opportunity. And it created a tremendous amount of shame. And I felt like I was never going to be able to escape from it. And by the grace of God, I had that moment that you hear about with people that are in recovery where I woke up one day and decided enough was enough. And I had the willingness to seek help and to really take direction. Like, I'm somebody who likes to believe that everything I've achieved is the result of my self-will and my propensity to suffer, whether it's, studying harder than the next guy or training harder. Like, I don't think I'm that talented a person, but I know how to outwork, the person sitting next to me. And alcoholism was one thing in which that self-will just didn't work. And I couldn't understand that. So it was a very confusing time. And it took many years for me to repair my life. If you Google my name and kind of read about my story, it looks like it all happened overnight. And it was, I'm 51. It's taken me 20 years to get from that place to this point. So throughout that period of time, there was plenty of doubt. And, my faith was tested in ways I don't wish upon anybody. And lots of times where I felt alone, and many years where, even after I got sober and I was very unhappy as a lawyer, I couldn't figure out what I was going to do with my life or what made me tick or what I was here to express. And it really required me to live in the moment and really, get on my knees and quicken my spiritual beliefs, and my sense of myself. And again, that goes back to, working the 12 steps and Alcoholics Anonymous, which shaped my life and continues to this day. Daily journaling, taking care of myself, and really, wrestling with the deep questions that we all have about what we're here on earth to do. And I wish I could give you a prescriptive, pithy answer to how I did it. But I think it was just showing up every single day, and regardless of how I felt, like trying to just do a little bit better than I did the day before.
Yeah, I heard you talk about on another show or podcast where you said that you started drinking in college. You were nervous, so you would drink to be able to handle the social aspect more. Is that how it started?
Yeah, I think my introduction to alcohol began when I started taking recruiting trips to all these colleges, and they show you a good time. Right? So I was like, this is great. And, I think I'm somebody who is just wired a little bit differently. I was very much a loner as a kid. I had difficulty making friends. I didn't show any prowess as an athlete as a kid. I had a patch on my eye and headgear, and I was the last kid picked for kickball, and really had difficulty connecting with other people. And when I discovered alcohol, it was like it was the solution to every problem that I didn't know that I had. And I loved it. And I have to say that it helped me. It helped bring me out of my skin. It helped me learn social skills and how to be a social animal. It works until it stops working. And then when it stops working, it becomes very difficult to stop the behavior. So why I'm an alcoholic, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. I have a solution for treating it, and it's something that I have to stay on top of on a daily basis.
And then you start doing this endurance athletics at 41 years old. You said you're now 50?
51.
51. So you've been doing it for 10 years. You wrote Finding Ultra, and then you also wrote this new book, incredible book. Tell us about this.
So this book, The Plant Power Way Italia, is the second cookbook that my wife and I have written together. It's really her book, like it's her heart and soul that's poured into it. And it's a follow-up to our first book, which was called The Plant Power Way, which is really a family primer on the plant-based lifestyle and how to live more in alignment with nature and yourself. And in the wake of the success of that book, my wife and I started doing these retreats in Italy at this incredible villa. We were taking 40 people through a week-long experience, transformative experience of meditation and trail running and tea ceremony and plant-based nutrition. And we collaborated with the chefs of the region to create a menu for that week-long experience. And we've done this over the last couple of years. And so we wanted to write a book that kind of chronicled that experience. The Plant Power Way, our first cookbook, the idea behind that was to make people feel comfortable pulling up a chair to our family table, our family dinner. And this book is more about community. It's about how we're spreading this message and how we want to take it more global. And look, everybody loves Italian food. Cheese and meat is a big part of the Italian cuisine. And we wanted to really reinvent it. So we think of it as like Italian food 2.0, and it's super delicious. It's very hearty. And we're excited to be able to share 125 incredible recipes that no matter where you fall on the diet spectrum, whatever your dietary proclivities are, if you're a hardened meat eater or an omnivore, you're going to love these recipes, and we're super proud of it.
We always have these cool moments between us. For instance, right now, my daughter is actually calling me from Italy, where she's studying in Florence, Clemson abroad.
Wow.
And was your retreat place far from there? Tuscany?
No. Yeah, it's a villa that's about 40 minutes outside of Florence, and we're actually going to be there in a couple weeks. We're doing another retreat May 19th to 26th. So maybe she can pop down and say hi.
That's pretty wild. And so what happened was, people watching this, my daughter had just watched What the Health, and Rich Roll stars in that. It's a Netflix documentary about eating vegan and so forth. And my daughter walked downstairs and said, I just watched this movie and I'm going to start eating vegan. And she's like, there's this guy, Rich Roll. And I said, Jade, Rich Roll is coming over right now. We're going to do a podcast on his show. She's like, what? No way. So she's so excited. And here we are talking. You just talked about Italy, and she calls me from Italy in this moment, which I think is hilarious.
Crazy. I love when the universe works that way.
Yeah, it's a very cool moment. And yeah, we're really into, obviously, Italian food. My family's Italian, so I grew up in a Jewish Italian family, a lot of food, a lot of guilt. And I know that these recipes are awesome, incredible. Why should people eat vegan for those who have never eaten vegan before?
Well, I think, right now we're in an interesting time, John. The United States is this incredibly prosperous nation, and yet we've never been more sick as a society. When you look at the statistics, it's really quite grim. 1 out of 3 people will die of a heart attack. 70% of Americans are obese or overweight, which is just insane. And they're predicting that by 2030, something like 30% of Americans are going to be diabetic or pre-diabetic. And look, it's the food that we're eating. The food that we're eating is making us sick. We're both overfed and undernourished at the moment. And our current system for feeding the planet, which is factory farming, animal agriculture, is also wreaking tremendous havoc on our planet. It requires a tremendous amount of resources, of water, of land. And the runoff from animal agriculture is polluting our water table and acidifying our oceans and contributing to mass species extinction. And all these, we're clearing the rainforest to make more room to graze cattle and raise grain for cattle. And it's really kind of a dire situation. And eating plant-based foods close to their natural state is a really beautiful way, not only to sidestep these chronic illnesses that are unnecessarily killing millions of people, but to live more gently on our planet, to care for our planet, not just for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children. And to the extent that, I can go out and perform as an athlete in my 50s eating this way. I've been eating this way for 11 years. I feel very passionate about it. And it's nice to be able to live this way and outside a system that's damaging the planet and creating so much suffering. And I can't be, more excited about sharing my experience. And, I'm not here to tell anybody how they should live or how they should eat. I'm only here to share my experience for those that are interested in it.
I love that, because there's a lot of people who eat meat and they said they feel great eating meat and so forth. So, my wife still eats meat. I can't eat meat anymore. I've developed allergies to actual out meat. So I have to do seafood and vegan for my diet, not by choice. But do you feel a lot stronger, healthier, and better eating this way?
There's no question about it. What happened to me is when I adopted a plant-based diet, I was trying on a bunch of different diets to try to find a way to feel good again. And I wasn't having much success. And the only kind of box that I hadn't checked was going totally vegan, because that just didn't sound so good to me. What are you going to eat? You're just going to eat salad your whole life? But I thought, I can't really say that I fully conducted this experiment unless I try it. And I did. And it was undeniable within a week to 2 weeks of eating this way that I felt just so much better. And it's what gave me the energy to then go out and move my body once again. And then it's been a journey of learning more and more about how to do it and how to do it right and how to do it as an athlete. I think that it's undeniable to me that It's a prescription for not just living healthy, but also athletic performance. And I think it's pretty exciting right now to see a lot of athletes out there experimenting with it and reaping success in that regard. It's one thing for me as like a skinny endurance athlete guy to talk about it, but now you're seeing guys like Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One racer, is doing it. Tennis star Serena Williams, and what's the guy's name? Novak. Djokovic. Who's a super advocate of this, and we've got Kyrie Irving and Zdeno Chara for the NHL, who's all about it right now. And I think it's super exciting when you see athletes who are where their bread and butter is power, agility, speed, brute force, who are experiencing success eating this way. And I think we're only going to see more and more of this. Super exciting.
It's amazing because I've seen you in person. You're 51. You look a lot younger. You have this lifestyle. Imagine if you were still eating the way you used to eat, living the lifestyle that you used to live. You'd probably maybe even look 60 or 70. I mean, you could look and feel so much younger based on your diet, your choices. It's not just genes, right? So my question is to you is, have you ever been tested medically to say what age you really are right now, like internally? Not your real age, but the age that you are.
Is there a test that lets you? That I don't know if there is that test. I'll go take it. I haven't taken that test. I do have my blood work done regularly, and
yes,
good. I don't have deficiencies or anything like that. Heart disease does run in my family. My grandfather, who I'm named after, died of a heart attack at age 54, and he was a champion swimmer for the University of Michigan back in the 1920s. So, I do have heart disease in my family, and I had a calcium scan done, and, I don't have a perfect score because I didn't live a very healthy lifestyle for many, many years. So I have to be really careful about it, even to this day. Genetics load the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger, and it's how you live that can help you overcome whatever genetic predispositions that you have. And, had I continued to live the way that I was living, there's no question that I would have had a heart incident already by this time.
Yeah, I love that you talk about, eating healthy, this lifestyle, but you also talk about your past. What energizes you most in your talks and in your work? Is it all of the stuff combined, or is there one that energizes you more than the other in terms of your journey?
I mean, the thing that gets me most excited these days is trying to be as helpful as possible in the most significant way to the most number of people. So when I get up in the morning, I think about how can I be of service. Service is something that I learned in recovery, and it's the cornerstone of everything that I do. And as much as I enjoy the training and the racing and all of that, at some point there's a little bit of a self-indulgence aspect to that. If I'm out doing 8-hour training rides, then there's probably less podcasts and less conversations with people like yourself. So it's about balancing these passions that I have and trying to figure out what can I do with the gifts that I have to be as helpful as I possibly can to other people. And sometimes going out and doing a race is a great way of carrying that message. At 51, to be able to go out and kill it, perhaps that speaks louder than whatever comes out of my mouth. So there's a place for that. But for me, it's the books, it's the talks, it's the podcasts. The podcast really has been the tip of the spear of everything that I do, and has been the most impactful work that I've been able to do. And I'm just, I've been doing it for 6 years, and I'm as excited and enthusiastic about it as I've ever been.
It's one of the best podcasts out there. I urge everyone to listen to it. It's incredible. I get so much from it. You really are serving so many people with it, having a huge impact. What are you excited about going forward in terms of your 51? Do you want to continue? Do you want to continue racing until your 60s, 70s?
I don't know. I don't look out into the future that far ahead. It's not like I sit down and here's my 5-year plan, here's my 10-year plan. I do have something exciting that's in the works for next year that I'm not quite ready to talk about, that could be big. And then other than that, I just feel so grateful to get up and be able to do what I love doing and share the message that I'm sharing and be able to sort of support and provide for my family in doing that. And so to the extent that I get to continue to do that, I'm a happy guy. And of course, I want to broaden the reach and figure out new ways to be more helpful to people. And what that looks like, I don't really know at this point, but I do have some cool stuff that's going to be coming up next year.
I love it. I do a Triple H exercise with everyone, and the first H is hero. Who is your hero?
Wow. Who is my hero?
Or one of your heroes?
Yeah, one of my heroes. Um, I guess it's twofold. I mean, there aren't like people that I look up to and I say, I want to be that guy. Like I'm really happy with the person that I am now. So I feel less and less a desire to like look outside of myself for that kind of inspiration. I would say, I would like to credit David Goggins, who's this amazing Navy SEAL, because it was his example participating in these ultra endurance events that gave me the confidence boost to think that I could perhaps do that. So he's been a huge inspiration to me, and he's been on my podcast. He's been on Joe Rogan's podcast. If people don't know who he is, he's an incredibly inspirational figure. And then besides that, the people that inspire me the most are average, everyday people who are toiling in anonymity and facing obstacles that I think we can all relate to, who overcome them. They're not people who are writing books or doing podcasts. They're just people who are trying to live a little bit better. And like yourself, John, I'm sure you get emails from people all over the world who have been impacted by your work and share with you, their stories. And I get a lot of those emails, and that's really what inspires me and keeps me going.
Yeah, I love that, because you realize that they're the real heroes. We're just sharing information, but they're incredible. So the next H is a hardship that you faced, a defining moment in your life that helped you become who you are today. But I think we know that answer. I think we already.
Yeah, a couple of those.
I think we covered that already, right?
Yeah.
And so then the last H is highlight. What's a highlight in your life?
It's funny when I think back on kind of what I've endured to get to this place and the things that I've accomplished. Most people would say, well, it was crossing the finish line at this race, or the day my first book came out, like these kind of milestone markers. But I actually don't really think about that stuff very much. What I think about are the really hard days where I didn't know if anything was going to work out. I have one memory that's very vivid to me and very specific. When I was writing Fighting Ultra, when I was writing this book.
Can you show it real quick? Can you show it?
Yeah, Fighting Ultra.
Look at that book. That's awesome.
When I was writing this book back in 2011, the first edition of it, I was broke. I was trying to practice law. Nothing was really clicking in my life. I was training for these races, wasn't making any money. Like, it was a very difficult time. We went through a very challenging protracted, sort of financial dismantling. I've got a bunch of kids, and it was very emasculating as the head of a household to really struggle with being able to put food on the table. But having this conviction and this knowing that the way through was to pursue these passions of mine, to get on paper, what I had experienced. And because of all the kids that are housed, I can't really work at home. It's too chaotic and crazy. And I couldn't afford to have like an office space. So I wrote most of that book in Starbucks. and the other thing, and then when I would occasionally pull these really late nights, like Starbucks would close at 10, and I'm like, I'm on a writing jag. I gotta like keep writing. And there's one place near my house, this FedEx Kinko's, that was a 24-hour one. It was the only place anywhere near my house that was open for 24 hours that had like Wi-Fi where I could work. And it was this old bank building that they had turned into a FedEx, and it had an upstairs. And I would go there at late at night, and it would be a couple college kids up there. And then as it got later and later, the college kids would go home, and the night manager at this Kinko's would let homeless people come in and kind of camp out on these desks at night. And I would pull all-nighters up in this room with like 3 or 4 homeless guys crashed out on who smelled bad and who were just trying to get some sleep. And I'm here writing this book, and I was like, I can't, I was like, what is happening to my life? And I remember that so vividly. It seems like a dream now. And it's experiences like that really give the journey meaning. It's not the finish lines. It's like the challenges that you meet along the way where you find the fortitude to kind of see it through.
That is beautiful. How many kids do you have?
Got 4 kids. all ages. Actually, our two older boys just moved out and got their own apartment. So now we're down to 2 kids at the house. It feels like empty nest, even though we're a family of 4. And we have we always take people in. Like I think a year and a half ago, we had like 9 people living at our house. Like that's kind of how we conducted our household over the years. So it seems very quiet and manageable right now.
What a great model for your kids, though, to be able to pursue your passion in the midst of all that and show them what's possible, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's been very beneficial for them. I mean, there are things that we had to endure as a family that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I wish I could change, actually. And we've been able to have, my wife and I have been able to have conversations with our 2 older boys about it because they had to go through some really tough times. And, they've said like, yeah, it wasn't fun. It was bad. But they were able to see 2 people committed to their vision and really, willing to see it through. And I think that's inspired them to pursue their own passions and also to burst this bubble of entitlement that I think is problematic with, the younger generation, to understand that like if you have a dream, it's going to require a tremendous amount of work and it's not going to be a linear path.
Yeah, my wife and I went through something similar in our journey too. How did you and your wife stay together and stay strong together through all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I know that you have a similar story in this regard. And I think like yourself, I was lucky enough to have a partner who really had my back. And I had plenty of moments because I'm an attorney, I could have gone and gotten a job at a law firm. And there were plenty of moments where I was like, I just need to do that. I got to stop this nonsense and go back. And she would always say like, no, that's not the way forward. The way forward is to see this through. And without that level of deep support, I don't think I would have ever made it. And I think it was a scenario that could have blown apart like a lot of relationships, but ultimately it really brought us together and created a deeper level of intimacy in our relationship.
I love that because a lot of people say, I have to write a book. I have to go on a retreat. I have to go away for weeks and write this book. But you are writing in the midst of chaos. You are creating something amazing through all the turmoil. And that's what produced something so significant and amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It was tough. It was tough, but I'm so happy to be on the other side of it. It's just been. I feel so grateful to be able to get to do what I do, as I know you do as well, John.
Well, a guy the other day texted me and said, "Hey, is Rich Roll as cool as he seems?" And my answer back was yes. And so, Rich, I really appreciate you taking time for this, and you are awesome. So thank you so much for the impact you're having and the difference you're making in this world. And you really are a huge influencer in my life and so many others. So thank you.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. I love what you do. So keep inspiring the millions of people that you inspire on a daily basis, and much love. And let's do another podcast soon.
Yeah, we'll do it together.
All right, cool.